You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is the Waystation, your source for Star Wars news and rumors. Today is July 16th, 2023, and we're going to have a lot of talk tonight talking about the strike, in addition to a few other things. But this has kind of become a dark cloud that's just very seemingly started to kind of overcast us. And we're going to talk about the impacts in the Star Wars, maybe trickle into some of the other non-Star Wars IPs as well, and just kind of talk about the impact there. But speaking of big impacts, I'm joined by my fellow co-host. He's with us tonight, Jonesy. So glad you could be here. Welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm just thrilled I was able to make it tonight, Albert. I appreciate the invite.
It seems like every night it seems to be the case. So, yeah.
It is. It's kind of a miracle how this thing keeps working out. We should really make this a regular thing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll have to take that offline. But how's it going? How's your weekend been?
Weekend's been not too bad. Can't really complain about where it's gone. So had a wing party, man. We were able to like make a bunch of wings and jalapeno poppers and different sauces. And try them out. So that was kind of fun. Yeah, something different, So I thought that was pretty neat. But overall, I mean, unfortunately on the Star Wars front, we have all this excitement going for Ahsoka, and then now we are having to switch gears into like the serious real world implications of technology and fair work and pay and how we treat people and how we protect our IP, which for actors and writers is themselves, right?
Right.
And so it's a very complex and layered situation that we're in within this context of the strikes, that are going on, and a lot of conversations as to what this is going to have an impact on Star Wars, both for the immediate term as well as what we might see lasting on for the next several months here, and what that does to the slate of content as we go. But one thing that's consistent every single week, Albert, our amazing Patreon members are now part of the tribe members: Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, Steve, and Rita Reborn, and our Delusions of Grandeur members, Rod, CJ, and Alex. Thank you all so much. If you are curious about Patreon, and why wouldn't you be at this point? Because we have a Rebels Top 3 moment for Season 3 happening right after this show at 10 p.m. Central. So you would want to tune into that if you would like to watch the video. CantinaCast.com/Patreon. You can learn everything about what we offer over there. See if it's something you're interested in. No pressure at all. We just like having you around. And speaking of having you around, we have a lot of great people in our live stream tonight. CantinaCast.com/YouTube if you're listening to the podcast. Usually live on Sundays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Central. You could be like one of these amazing people. Skywalker Academy, 80s kid from the 90s, Jonathan, Steph, Sky, Risk, Jorge, Alex, Dante, Rob, Lauren. I'm reading them off the screen because they come in so fast I couldn't even write them down anymore. So the last couple of episodes have been really great. Thank you for all the support, especially with the Ahsoka content, as well as now tonight. We know this is going to be a bit of a hot subject. So thank you, everyone, for all of your support and for tuning in.
Yeah. Well, let's get started on it. And I will say this. We've got a few, I guess, lighter things to talk about, which is, so it's not going to be all doom and gloom. But I think this has really gotten the attention of a lot of folks because we've got a lot of series that are currently in flight. We've got a lot of things that are still yet to come, things that we know we should expect. And I think prior to this, the way I would kind of summarize this is, I think with the writer's strike, I mean, yes, we figured there would be potential impacts depending on how long that went. When we start getting into actor strikes, that's when the proverbial poodoo hits the fan, right? Because now we're hitting, actual the actors themselves, and there's a lot of things in terms of if they're part of the guild that they just can't do, and it's going to change how television series are promoted, movies are promoted. It's got more ramifications and implications than just the writers. And I'm not diluting the writer's strike, right? I'm not undermining it in any way. I'm just saying when the actors go on strike, and we saw this, I think it was 2007 or whenever we had the last actors strike, there were some impacts that were long lasting, years afterwards. And so I have a feeling we're going to see some of that here before we recover. But again, I guess the the quick takeaway there is that there's some good news in here. But why don't we get the bad stuff out of the way? Maybe I know there's a lot here, so I don't know if you want to just take a shot at kind of explaining high level what we're looking at now with the actor strike and some of the immediate impacts that we can foresee.
Yeah, I think when you've boiled down to this, and I think like you were saying before, it's not that the writers or the actors are more important, but now that we've got both at the same time, the last time that both were on strike at the same time was 1960. So Ronald Reagan was president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time.
Oh, wow.
That's how far back it was since both had been on strike at the same time. And that's why this is so compounded now, because at least if you have one striking, not the other, you have a different side of work you can. But now, I mean, yeah, you can produce things once it's in post, but everything is ground to a halt because you can't do anything. But I think, yes, fundamentally, and this is going to really oversimplify what all the concerns are. But if you look at kind of two major areas that they're really worried about, one is streaming, right? The residuals that go with streaming, the whole environment, the whole industry has been turned upside down. They don't have Nielsen ratings. There's no transparency. Actually, I wrote an article today with Tony Gilroy talking a little bit about there's just no transparency to it. So from a creator, you don't have that touch point with your audience when it goes through a streaming service. You're disconnected from it. Unlike if you are with the movies or if you are with even network television, you got a lot of real-time feedback, but they just don't have that feedback loop. And the other one that's really coming front and center, we know this has been boiling for a long time, is AI.
Yeah.
You know, what's your likeness worth? Who owns your likeness? When you sign a contract, what does that contract actually mean for your likeness, right? So there's a lot of caveats to it and a lot of layers, and it's evolving, but they're trying to get out in front of this as much as they can, you know, given where they're at with just the boom in AI right now. I mean, this has gone, we've seen waves of AI before, but I don't know about you. I don't remember seeing one this robust in the last 6 months or so, maybe the last year, as we've had in this period of time. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this with the amount of progress that we're making in the computer generated effects. We've seen it with Respeecher. We've seen it with AI, you know, de-aging, a whole slew of things. And they're very worried about their likenesses and things like that being able to, being able to done. And we'll link an article over to, so not only will we link a link to the general premise of what's going on with the actor strike, but also Bestman Bulletin had a really great article that laid out what some of the proposals were between the organizations, between the Disneys of the worlds and then the actors. So you can have an idea of what they're negotiating, what they're trying to do. So I won't try to paraphrase all of that because it was a lot.
Yeah,
and those were all offers, and of course they weren't accepted, so they're not really grounded in anything. But you get a better idea of what they're worried about and what some things look really, really like you could tell why they were pissed and why they cut off negotiations just whatsoever and just said, we're done with this. But any kind of thoughts just on the general premise of what they're striking about? And it's not always about, usually we think it's about pay, and it is about corporate greed in a lot of ways. But for this one, it's really about protecting themselves more so than ever before.
Yeah. Well, you're right. So I think the three pillars here are the transparency aspect you talked about, the onset, and just the accelerated pace in which AI has come on into the scene here. That permeates just about every other industry as well, right? This movies, television, the film industry, they're not the only ones impacted by the onset and the advancements that AI is making. There's a lot of them that play into it. And so, could they have done this, 2 years ago ahead of this and prepared for it? No. I mean, it's just been so quick that this has kind of come on here. So it's been very difficult for them to stay on top of this. And I get why they're doing it. Like, there's nothing in this, in my opinion, at least from my own personal opinion, there's nothing in here that looks unfair, right? They're not asking for a whole lot here. You can argue the pay thing. And I want to just one real quick thing. In social media, I've seen a lot of people going, oh, the poor billionaires that make all these movies, they're so, they're going to be so hurt. It's not about that. I mean, if that's your outlook on film, television, that's pretty obtuse in terms of your scope, right? You're focusing, again, on a very small portion. There are a lot of actors across all of the film and television industries that are impacted by this that don't make billions and millions of dollars per year. And those are the guys that are going to hurt more. So do the other guys benefit from this? Yeah, probably financially. But the underlining one that I think has got the biggest chops is what you said. It's really about protecting the likeness, the studios being able to kind of take that likeness and be able to do what they want with that over, not just in their lifespan. I mean, this is, once they've got this thing locked down, right, they can use this 20 years from now, 100 years from now, whatever they want to do to bring back actors. And so it's a very difficult, very challenging kind of negotiating process to kind of really wrap your head around how do I protect myself, right? And this really started probably about 5 years ago, I think. Maybe even when we were on this show, I think it was during Rogue One. It was right after Rogue One, and we had the Princess Leia thing, right? And we started talking about this, and so that was what was Rogue One? 2019, 2017, 2017,
yeah, something like that. Yeah,
whatever it was. Either way, so yeah, but probably in the last 5 years alone is where it really started. So nothing here is new again, right? The transparency piece, that one is a very interesting one as well. You've got a lot of people, a lot of actors that, when they signed up for streaming services, weren't really exactly sure. The terms seem kind of loose. Again, you can get into the details, and I'm not a lawyer, but just reading it, it's so nebulous and it's very open in terms of what they, have to pay the actors for when they stream. And what we've seen recently is studios just removing things like, we don't want to pay them the royalties. We don't want to get into a legal dispute. So we'll just pull the whole thing off. And so how can you pay somebody for something being streamed when it's not available to stream? So it almost feels kind of snakish for them to do that. But at the same time, they're kind of the movie industry, I guess the bigwigs are protecting their own pocketbooks. Here's the last thing I'll say about this before we kind of get into the specifics and the impacts that we'll probably see here as it relates to Star Wars. The other thing that I want to say is, I just don't know how much this is going to impact us over the next 3-4 years. Again, I think it's going to. Again, what I mentioned earlier was the Actors Guild, when they went on strike, there were a lot of things that were just held up for years, a lot of stuff that never really made it out. And I would imagine we're going to see the same thing. I mean, we're on what 70 days now, I think is what we're at with the Writers Guild, and we're just starting the Actors one.
And the longest the writers have ever struck, I think, was 100 days. So, I mean, we're going to reach that number pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think we're going to be talking about this, unfortunately, for a long time, so, which is, maybe gives us great talking points and gives us show content. But at the same time, I would really like to hopefully get this thing behind us and not have to talk about it, because it feels like we are focusing so much more time and attention, rightfully so, on this and not really talking about the other stuff. And we can't talk about the other stuff because it's not getting made and everything's kind of coming to a grinding halt. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it proverbially is. So
yeah, so let's dive into what this actually might mean for us in the Star Wars space. I think so. The more immediate thing that we'll notice is that if this is for the actors, we're not talking about the Writers Guild, because there's some differences between the writers and the actors guilds, and even the solidarity between the different countries and stuff is a little bit different. But when it comes to the actors guild, they are forbidden. And actually, if they have anything scheduled, they have to immediately cancel any kind of appearance. So they're forbidden from participating in anything that is deemed promotional. So that means press tours, appearances, interviews, conventions, fan expos, festivals, panels, previews, premieres, screenings, award shows, junkets, podcasts. Wait a minute, are we striking too? No, we're not striking. And social media, right? So anything that would promote and be associated directly with content that is owned by one of these studios, as an actor, you are not allowed to participate in any of that stuff. And if you have something scheduled, you have to cancel it. Now, might we see some impact? We have San Diego Comic-Con coming up this weekend, right? Or next weekend. We're on the 16th here. It begins, I think, Thursday or Friday. So will we see impact immediately on that front? I think the answer might be no, but they have to be very cautious about what they're promoting. If they're there to introduce a movie, those are now canceled, or at least the actors won't be there for it.
Right.
But if they're there for a signing or for an appearance on their own accord and are not associated with something, I could see where they would still keep those appointments and do that. There's probably some gray area about what kind of guidance they're giving with that.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at that, especially through Ahsoka right now, I think that's the main one we're going to notice right away, is that there is not going to be any promoting from Rosario Dawson or Mary Elizabeth Winstead or any other major characters that are coming out, because they just won't be allowed to. So I think that's going to be a very different marketing campaign than what we're used to. It will be purely TV spots and YouTube videos and commercials and things like that. I'm really curious if Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau will be allowed to, from a Writers Guild perspective, if they'll be allowed to do promotional stuff.
I think they're probably safe, I would imagine, but I can't see them not joining in solidarity for, falling in line, and because that just seems kind of, I don't know. It wouldn't look good, right? If they just came out and said, okay, we'll go out there and run the press junket and make all these interviews. I don't see them doing that.
Well, I mean, and I think it's a little bit unique because Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni, I guess more specifically in this case, has so much clout and so much popularity that usually just the showrunner or the writer wouldn't really have that kind of attention. But as Dave Filoni, so he runs a piece of the ship with Star Wars, right? So that aspect of it is quite important. So he is a valuable commodity, and he is the conduit to the fans, right? In a lot of cases, as much as the actors, if not more so, I think, in a lot of these newer content that's coming out. But so anyway, for San Diego Comic-Con this weekend, I'm not seeing any real impact. There is a Lucasfilm publishing panel that has been scheduled. It is still going on. They're all promoting it. All the writers are promoting it. So again, different from that aspect of things than it is from what we're seeing with the actors. So again, no immediate concern with what we're seeing on San Diego Comic-Con at the very least.
Yeah. What do you think about the, Filoni's a writer too? That's true. They both technically are.
Right.
So from the Writers Guild, I can see them deciding not to do kind of promotional stuff. So we're talking about, I guess, kind of. Here's my thought, I guess, on the impact. So I would agree, like it's going to feel different going into Ahsoka because it doesn't look like it's going to get resolved before, the show premieres, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
right.
I mean, yeah, it's not. But I would say I don't know that it'll change anything because what we usually get in the interviews is more contextual around the characters and that sort of thing. With this one, I think it may have impacts to people that are, again, not familiar with, Rebels and loosely familiar with Ahsoka, because all they're going to have is the trailers and TV spots. And that might be enough. We might see more TV spots and trailers. We might see more footage than they generally would release to kind of keep that hype going and keep the interest going. So we may see a change there. But will it impact like the success of a show? I don't know. Ahsoka seems like it's too late to have an impact on it. Excuse me. I was trying to think what else have we got coming up here. Like Skeleton Crew would be one that I'd be very curious to see what the impacts are going to be for that one. That one might be a little bit more longer lasting because they haven't really had a chance to get the word out and talk about it a whole lot outside of what we saw at Star Wars Celebration, which really wasn't a lot. And a lot of that was behind closed doors. So we're not going to get, the Entertainment Weekly articles and the Variety Magazine articles and that sort of thing. And that's what kind of does that legwork, the groundwork.
You might get some
generating.
of it if those interviews happened before the strike happened. If they've been in the can for a while and they're just waiting to be released, you might still get some of that. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. And I think the Skeleton Crew is an interesting one because we don't really know where it's at in the production cycle. We know it's supposed to come out later this year, but does that mean that they were done with the actors so that there is no impact, or where there's still needing to be reshoots or anything like that might be impacted now? That might be a delay.
Yeah.
So I think that one's one of these we'll have to wait and see if they come out. But again, I think if this goes on for more than 30 or 45 days, then for Skeleton Crew, you'd probably start to see that date slip pretty quickly, and they'd have to come out and kind of backtrack that one. Of course, they don't have an official release date for it yet, so maybe you don't have to do it too overtly. Mm-hmm. A couple of the other ones that are really interesting to watch, though, are Andor and The Acolyte. So Andor has been filming. They're not done filming yet. They were supposed to wrap up in August. So that production is shut down unless you are not part of the U.S. Screen Actors Guild. If you're not part of SAG-AFTRA, all the acronyms we got these days, if you're not part of that and you're in the UK, you're supposed to still work. And actually the UK Actors Guild has said you will work. So House of Dragon has been recording, and they've got a lot of flack for this, but their actors are not part, or they're working in that country. It seems like a different set of rules to where a lot of the writers universally just kind of stopped and preach solidarity between them. But that seems to be a little more strict this time around with the actors. And I think some of it is because the economic impact of some of these areas, and you talk about Southern California's impact, you think about the state of Georgia, no movie production is going to severely impact these communities. But I think with Andor, it's going to be one of those things because not everybody, some of these actors are part of the U.S. Screen Actors Guild, and it's for a U.S. company. And so
Right.
I could see where Andor probably had to completely shut down and stop everything it was doing. So not only have you lost your writer for the show, now you've lost your actors. You know, they were trying to get this for a release next year, around August of next year, probably. So I could see where that might have, depending on how long this goes for. And then again, where they're filming at, you've got to be very concerned about weather and things like that too. So you have very different, you know, your shooting schedule is now completely screwed.
Yeah.
Now we'll have to see how much they already did, but I think that's a really big concern for Andor. And again, the Acolyte's a similar story, just because they finished filming, but that doesn't mean they're done. They probably need to go back and do reshoots. They need to go do rewrites. So I think that one, again, you're starting to see some of these things will pull later in the year next year than maybe what we were hoping for. And time will tell when those get released, and we'll be able to do a look back and just kind of see what the overall effect may have been to this content that was supposed to release in 2024. But yeah, I'm with you. Skeleton Crew is a really big question mark right now, because I could see where this one might slip if there was anything left to do that wasn't pure post-production.
Yeah, that's true. We could be, and on that note, I think as my memory serves me, back in 2007, however long that went for that strike, you could just add that amount of time to a lot of shows, and that's when it would come out again. And then where that didn't apply was if it landed wonky, like, oh, now it's going to release in December 25th, and it didn't make sense, then they would figure out like a spring kind of date to push it out. So maybe went out even further, like 3 more months out further, but everything got shoved out once we came off of that strike, and people were playing the reshuffling game, because
Right.
you've seen how they shuffle the movie release dates and TV release dates, and they watch what the other groups are doing to try to figure out what's most strategic for them to kind of bring in the most money. So we'll see a lot of that shifting as it continues to settle in once this thing is over, which I expect it to be over. I mean, all these things do end, and unfortunately, and I may be a little cynical here, but if I remember correctly, in 2007, one of the things that came from that was all of the financial stuff that was being fought for was all finally agreed upon. But the movie industry, the big, high, expensive, they didn't eat the price on this stuff. They just passed the price down to us. So that as I recall it, that's when I remember tickets going, at least here locally, from like $6 to like $10. There was a big jump in the ticket prices, and now it's like, we're already at, I don't know, $12, $15, even higher depending on where you live for ticket prices. So all I'm saying is, depending on how much money is being asked for here, they'll pay the actors, but they're not taking it from their pocketbooks, right? They're going to go, it's going to get trickled down into us. We're the ones that are going to have to pay for it, because they're not taking the loss. They're not going to take the cut, which is kind of crappy, but this all goes back into the economics of inflation and that sort of thing, which is well beyond the scope of what we're going to get into tonight.
Well, and what's interesting is back in 2007, like some of the actors that were around back then as well, I say back then like it was that long ago, but 16, right. 16 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And looking back, we gave in too quickly on those. We caved. They didn't get everything they wanted, they being the actors. They didn't get everything that they wanted and they went in for, and they regret it. And so now you're in this position of, are they digging their heels in? So the 2007 strike went 100 days. So if it goes 100 days, we'll just call it 3.5 months, right?
Right.
That would take us all the way up until the beginning of November. I mean, you talk about a serious impact where you have shut everything down through the prime fall, premiere, all of that type of stuff. You're losing all of that from a studio perspective. I mean, you have a really severe impact on just everything that we enjoy, and you will start to see a huge slowdown. And again, I'm with you. I think if they dig their heels in and they want to get all the things they want, at the end of the day, someone's got to pay for it. And I'm really curious about this, because so when I was growing up, or I was in my teenage years, the 1994-1995 Major League Baseball strike was a huge deal. And I think it's a cautionary tale. It's almost like Bo-Katan and the Darksaber. But it was a cautionary tale, because that strike got so nasty between the owners and the players. It took 3 or 4 years, I think minimum, 3 or 4 years before they recovered from a fan relationship basis.
Right.
And I think this is something that you have to be really cautious with, some of the rhetoric that gets thrown out there sometimes. And while it's cool to be passionate about it and to really uphold your values and what you want out of this, you have to be careful not to alienate the people that buy your product at the very end of the day. So they may not be paying you directly, but they're paying you indirectly through the studios, right?
Right.
They're the ones that give you that license to do what you want to do because they keep going back. And so I think that's something you have to always continue to remember back, is that your decisions you make and the way that you talk about one another and the way how disrespectful you might get, and these things do get ugly sometimes. And I'm not saying that they're that point now, but some of the rhetoric's pretty strong already, and I can only imagine it's going to get worse. You have to worry about what are you doing, because right now we're seeing, while there are some exceptions, overall box office numbers are not where the studios want them to be. Even if you have good movies, like some Mission Impossible we've talked a lot about, it didn't make quite as much money as it still did really well, but it didn't make quite as much money as they were hoping it would. They really thought it was going to blow the doors off, right? And so it's kind of picked up a little bit of steam, but it hasn't been quite as successful as they wanted, even though it's still very much a successful movie. So I think it's just something to be aware of, don't lose sight of other situations that have not gone as well, and just knowing that this is all a luxury for us, and a luxury to consume and buy and purchase as content. And we've stopped showing up for movies before, and and I'm not trying to belittle either side of it, but they need to get it figured out, and they need to not drag it out in the press.
Yeah, right. I'm with you there. Well, and we've got, I guess, one other black eye that we need to talk about here. Bob Iger recently sat down with CNBC and was kind of talking about pulling back on Marvel, pulling back on Star Wars. I think he used the word greed in referring to what the guilds were asking for, feeling like they were asking for too much. So I don't know what's the latest on that.
Well, I think the thing to remember about, so this was an interview with CNBC. There's a video. We'll have it linked. And while the interview, this was at an annual investor conference, just for framing it up, it looked like they were on a golf course or something. So it was just a one-on-one interview. The interviewer asked about Marvel and Star Wars, but Iger only talked about Marvel specifically, or at least by name. And so I think that's important to make sure that's clear. You'll see the headline include Marvel and Star Wars, but
every headline has Star Wars, but it was never actually explicitly discussed.
But it's not actually discussed more specifically, because Marvel is a bit of the problem right now, because there is so much content coming out, right? And I think it comes back to a very succinct comment that he made. He said they want to spend less on what they make, and they're going to make less. Mm-hmm. So they need to bring the cost down of what they're spending when they're making the shows and the movies, and they're going to slow down how much they produce, and they're going to be more selective. That's kind of what that means. We've been talking about this for months, right? About with the Disney transition and everything else that goes along with it. They need to make sure they're very focused on what they want to do, make sure it's really great. Now his framing of that, I think, is always really important too, to make sure you get all of the context. He believes is that they have produced so much content that they are stretching themselves thin and watering down that content to where their people are struggling to keep up. And he feels that is degrading the overall quality of it. So when you look at it from that perspective, whether you believe him or not, let's just take it at face value for right now. It makes sense, right? If he truly believes this, then it really does make sense of saying, okay, we've got our hands in too many cookie jars. We're just getting crumbs now because we got to move on to the next one before we finish the one we're on. Let's take our time and see if we can get this right, bring the right talent in. And he said, this is not a people problem. This is not a talent problem, right? They can attract the top talent in the world. That is not the issue. It's more about focus and being able to really give them the opportunity and the time to not chase deadlines, but chase great quality content, which is really hard to argue, right? I mean, it's when you look at the Marvel, like what they've produced, and you kind of see a general, not every show applies this, but there's a lot of them you're like, wow, I don't remember a string of Marvel shows that were this disappointing. Mm-hmm. Right, or you really like Thor: Love and Thunder was one I was really hyped up about, and it was just really it was a really letdown.
Oh man,
now, why
I love that one, but
why? Well, you would,
yeah.
So, but anyway, there's a lot of things that go to it, right? So, but it's just important to do that, and of course, amidst all of this stuff, the Disney board of directors decided to offer Uncle Bob an extension through the end of 2026.
Congrats, Bob.
Which he accepted.
Yeah.
And whether you like Bob Iger or not, it's important to understand why they feel comfortable with this, is because, A, I don't think they have an apparent successor at all. And they went through several before Bob. Bob Chapek was the one that they had picked.
Who? Who was that guy?
That was
Flash in the Pants Bob
cousin Bob. Yeah, not Uncle Bob, but cousin Bob.
That guy was in and out like no time.
Yeah, and I always feel bad for him because I think it's sometimes when you're thrown into a certain situation that wasn't really what they were hoping you would be able to go and tackle, but it's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
one you got. So I feel a little bit bad, but some of the things he was trying to do, the price increases and being a bit greedy, I definitely, he kind of dug that on grave. But I think the other thing is that Bob Iger, remember when he took over Disney, he had to completely transform the company, and he's done it multiple times.
Right.
We talked about his book where he goes over it in a lot of detail. So when you look at who's done it before, who did a great job of it, who's been innovative at the same time, you look at Bob Iger and you're like, if he's willing to do it, and he's like, yeah, I'm the guy for the job for the next couple of years, so we'll keep chugging along. So I mean, whether you like it or not, from a board perspective, it was unanimous. It wasn't even there was no question of who else there would be. It was unanimous.
So going back to going back to the first part, I mean, the word he used was diluted, to be exact, right? He said they had diluted a lot of what the content, and I think if you believe his problem, I think his solution seems like the appropriate fix. That seems to make sense. I think and I want to come back to what we talked about last weekend when we were talking about Spielberg and Lucas going up there and saying we've got a larger systemic problem that's happening right now with the amount of entertainment that's just available. And I think that's impacting a lot of what we're seeing. Like, there was a time when Disney had a lot of content, a lot of it was Marvel, and we were still good. Now, COVID was involved, and people weren't going out and doing things, and so they were kind of being, funneled into Disney Plus and streaming services. And so we saw this great big boom. And I know a lot of people are now coming back and saying, oh, this is the COVID effect. And while I think, yes, there's probably some impact there, I think what Spielberg and Lucas were talking about is probably more on par, more on point. There's only so many hours in the day. You only have so much disposable income. And we are in a day and age where at any given time, there are some amazing quality shows on there, whether you're looking at action, documentaries. I mean, you can throw in music, television, movies. You've just got so many video games, right? The proliferation of video games now and how advanced those things are continue to become. There's just too many more things that are available for our time and money. And so, if you're flooding yourself and you're spending all this money expecting people to go to that stuff, well, Disney, you're great and you make a lot of great content, but there are a lot of other people out there doing this, a lot of other companies that are doing this as well. And so until that gets addressed, right, I think we're going to still see problems like, too much content out there or great movies like Mission Impossible going out and maybe not making as much money. It has nothing to do with the people, like you said. It has nothing to do with the movie. They've said that's the best action movie in 20, 30 years is what I'm seeing from everybody. And the people that I've seen have said this is just like another level of action movie telling. But did it bring in what you would expect based on that? No. You could also look at too, like as the other side of the coin is, I don't want to paint a doom and gloom story here because we did get we had two films in 2023 already that, brought in, or last year, I should say, that were like ranked number 3 and number 7. I'm giving credit to Mark Newbold. He was talking about how the Spider-Man movie and Avatar, right?
Well, Super Mario Brothers.
Mario Brothers, $1 billion worldwide. So is the money there? Yes. Is it as easy to pull that in as it had been maybe pre-COVID? Because remember, pre-COVID, people were cranking out movies left and right, and it was like 500 million for worldwide, 750 $1 billion. We were having Disney was having $1 billion movies just rolling in at 2015, from 2015 to like 2020 or 2019, just before COVID. That wasn't uncommon, and now that's happening. And I guess what I'm saying is there are a lot of other contributing factors in there that are impacting it. It's not just writers or greed and that stuff. It's just kind of where we are right now with entertainment and the advancements in technology that we have.
Well, and Bob had a really interesting comment too. It was about when COVID happened, you talk about streaming, there started to become an expectation. I think the companies, they fueled this to an extent of saying that they started to develop an expectation for consumers that I don't need to go to the movie theater. It'll be on streaming soon enough.
Yes. No,
and I don't have to wait very long. Right. So I think it's a great, it was a great observation, right, of saying that that's a consumer behavior change that you've created out of necessity, I would argue. But now how do you resolve that? And how do you change behaviors back?
Right.
And
you gave the kid the candy, and now you're going to take the candy away from the child. It's not going to work.
But again, it's a perspective thing of saying, okay, I've got to give them a reason to compel them to go to the movies and want to see it now. Super Mario Brothers is a great example, right? You have a really old IP, 30 plus year IP. Why would people want to go see this movie now? Right? I mean, and again, but they did in droves, right? Because it got it had the right balance of everything. It was good enough in the story department and everything else. I mean, you and I thought it was great. But you find a reason for people to go out there and do it. And you need to rely on more than just your domestic audience. You have to rely on your worldwide audience. So pissing off some of the other countries with some of what you're doing, you have to make a decision on whether you want to keep doing that. You know you're not going to get released in certain countries with some content. How important is that to you? Right. So, some of those types of things maybe work into more of the political side of things maybe than we would prefer. But anyway,
thankfully, we have no Star Wars movies out right now or coming out. So look at that.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about that one.
Yeah, right. And none of them are being written or acted.
Or acted. So we're good for a while.
But hey, at the start of the show, you did allude to that we have a lot of great news going on too. And the Emmy Awards, ironically, I think they're supposed to happen in the middle of September, and that's probably not going to happen.
Oh boy.
now.
Yeah.
But at least from a nomination standpoint, oh my goodness, 22 nominations for Star Wars specific content, and then another one for Lucasfilm content as well. And we'll run through these really quickly, but this is really exciting because some of these are really major categories. So Andor got 8 nominations, including Outstanding Drama Series, Writing, Cinematography, Directing, Score, Main Title Music, Special Visual Effects, and Sound Editing. You talk about hitting a lot of the major ones there. Fantastic. Obi-Wan Kenobi got 5 nominations. Outstanding Series for a Limited Series, Editing, Sound Mixing, and Fantasy Sci-Fi Costumes. The Mandalorian got 9 nominations. Outstanding Cinematography for a half-hour show. Is that right? Yeah. No. Yeah, I think that's right. Special Effects, Stunt Performance, Sound Mixing for a drama series, Makeup for non-prosthetics, Hairstyling, Fantasy and Sci-Fi Costumes, same as Obi-Wan, and Sound Editing and Stunt Coordination. And then Light and Magic actually got a nomination for Outstanding Score for one of their episodes on that too. So
yeah,
that was kind of a little cherry on the cherry on the top.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, how cool is it to see Star Wars content getting nominated for things like Outstanding Drama Series?
Yeah.
Did you ever think that was possible in your lifetime?
No, and it's like, we kind of take this for granted because I'm looking at this and going, okay, yeah, I would expect Mandalorian to get, stunt performance, sound mixing. We always got the technical nominations, and very rarely did we get the awards, unfortunately, unless it was Light and Magic for visual effects, Yeah,
you get special effects and music and editing and things like that, but none of the good stuff. None
of the good
stuff.
Right. The meatier stuff, the stuff that has more clout or has more weight, with your peers and that kind of thing. But Andor is in that category. Now, I feel like a lot of the actors were kind of shunned, in my opinion, personal opinion, for Andor. Like, I mean, you think about the incredible speeches that we talked about, and just gushed over ad nauseum as they were released. The No Way Out speech that was delivered there, and Stellan Skarsgård and his speech, and I don't know, Martha, you can name all kinds of actors and characters that gave some really great speeches, and a lot of it is credited to writing. And at least we did get a writing nomination in here for, I think it was only one episode, I think specifically. They didn't really, I can't remember which one it was.
Well, yeah, you can't get them all, yeah.
Yeah, and I get that. But we got writing. We got cinematography and directing, which I think those are rare that we get those. Those all came from Andor. The rest of them, yeah, great stuff, but they are the technical ones, so you kind of expect them to at least be, on the table or in the mix to be selected. So I don't know. I feel like I really just, not to be greedy, I'll take it, but I just really wish they would have at least given a nod to some of the actors, at least in Andor of all the series, to be nominated for once. And it just seems to continue to elude Star Wars content. We haven't got there yet. I thought Andor was going to be the first one.
Well, but I think still it's an impressive slate. And again, when you look at recognizing the show, and when in some of the interviews I've read from Tony Gilroy and others, I think that were maybe pre-recorded for some of this, they were very much, he was looking at it from a perspective, I'm so glad we got these because it recognizes everybody that participated in making the show.
Yeah, more like a team nomination rather than individual nomination.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's great to get the individual accolades. He was like, it's cool about the writing, but really, I love it when I see that the whole series got recognized because that means we all did something right.
I get that.
And I love that aspect. I just love the approach that it's not forgotten. on the ones who that are in front of the camera or that get the attention, that they really do want to recognize everyone around them. So I think that's always really important to make sure you don't lose sight of the team effort. But so a lot of excitement. We'll see if the Emmys happen mid-September, I believe. So not likely, but we shall cross our fingers and see what happens. Because again, no one can attend a award show. All right, so a couple small ones here. So Young Jedi Adventures. If you have been a fan of the Young Jedi Adventures following this young ragtag crew from the High Republic era, the new episodes return on August 2nd. So that's both on Disney Plus and on Disney Junior, depending on which one you like to watch more often with your little ones. Or if you're Albert, you just watch it on normal Saturday. So again,
they're all good, by the way.
They are. Yeah,
they're amazing. I think they're only 7 minutes long total each, and there's 2 per episode.
Perfect for my attention span. So
right, but they're so well done. Like the animation's great, the music's great, the sound effects are of course great because they just lifted everything right out of Star Wars. So it's actually really good. I hope they. I heard a rumor that Bendu was going to make an appearance in season 2 of this next series of episodes.
Well, that might warrant a 4-hour breakdown of a 7-minute show.
We're going to be talking about Bendu a little bit later tonight when we get to our season 3 of Rebels, but just kind of throwing that out there. Sorry, keep going.
Well, speaking of 2-hour breakdowns, we do have a little Andor and an Ahsoka more comments here, and we broke down the Ahsoka trailer. So if you'd like to go check that out over on cantinacast.com/YouTube, we would certainly appreciate that. That was a lot of fun, and it was really great, a great trailer. So
great
please
discussion.
do go check that out. Now, a little bit of a spoiler warning here for you, and we talked a little bit about this already. I don't think this is a major spoiler, but we did get the name of the Inquisitor in Ahsoka, and also the actor who's playing the Inquisitor. So the actor is Paul Darnell, so it is a male in the costume, supposedly. This is kind of coming from Getty Images. I guess there's an all-access area to Walt Disney Studios for Getty Images, and when I tried to go out there, the link was taken down and stuff, so take some of this with a grain of salt. But the name of the Inquisitor is Marrok, Marrok. Now, if that sounds familiar, does it? Well, Albert, does that sound familiar without looking at the notes? You've already looked at the notes.
Yes.
But
no, I haven't looked at the notes. I know the name sounds familiar, and I know where it's coming from, and I can see the direct correlation. It goes back to G.I. Joe and Dave Filoni's obsession with Snake Eyes. I mean, if you follow Filoni outside of Star Wars, you know what he's obsessed about, and this kind of makes sense. I'll let you kind of continue on with it, but yeah.
Well, if it sounds familiar, so Marrok was if you remember Embo, the bounty hunter, right? Mm-hmm. He had
Clone Wars.
Yeah, he had an Anuba, but it was basically a wolf, a Star Wars wolf, and Marrok was the name of the wolf, right? And so if you remember, with Shin, Hati, or Hati, as some people want to call her, and Baylan Skoll, there's these wolves that are chasing the moon and the sun, right? So again, it kind of aligns with some of that theme as well. But of course, as you were saying, for a deeper cut, Embo and Marrok were of course modeled after G.I. Joe with Snake Eyes and Timber, and as a pairing there as well. So, always cool that this stuff kind of resurfaces. But I'm curious if the name will actually come out at all, rather than. But it's interesting that the character is named. This is kind of like Reva. Reva wasn't named as a number of a sister specifically, right? And so I'm curious if this will come out with Marrok. Or maybe this is one of the characters we already know from the Inquisitors that was already named as a brother, eighth brother, or whomever. Yeah. Although when you look at eighth brother, the more I looked at those scenes, the feet are a little bit different. That doesn't really mean anything necessarily. One was more alien feet, but we'll see where that goes. But so a little bit of a spoiler thing there, but nothing major, but still kind of fun. Yeah,
it's more like just drawing the connections to the characters themselves, and that's again if that isn't truly indeed it's not official. I've seen people poke holes in the Getty Images, and not specifically in Star Wars, although I think for the Star Wars one, the images that you were referring to, they had listed the stunt double as the actor on one of the images, right, which makes sense because they can, they kind of use those just interchangeably. But then I saw some other folks posting that there have been other movies and television series where Getty Images had a name listed, but the name didn't match up when it finally was released. So can't put a lot of faith and confidence into it. I just like the connection. And I mean, it's G.I. Joe, Snake Eyes, and then freaking wolves. So Dave Filoni's, you're already talking about, in his wheelhouse. So I'm not saying it's not possible. In fact, it seems very plausible given, the connections there. So we'll see.
And of course, you're getting G.I. Joe and Transformers blending into the, what do they call it? The Cybertron verse or the...
Oh, spoiler. Spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen the ending of the most recent Transformers movie.
That show is months old now, so you've had your time. All right, so we're running a little bit long on time, but maybe we'll end up here. We'll just wrap up. There is an interview with Genevieve O'Reilly over on Discussing Film. It's mostly Andor centric. It's a really good read. Encourage people to go out there and do it. There wasn't an Ahsoka, just kind of finish the Ahsoka side of things. There was an Ahsoka related comment in there, and so Genevieve O'Reilly mentioned how wonderful it was to work with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, actually, who is Hera, of course, which I thought was really curious. So when you suggest, I mean, we've seen them in the same screen or in the same images. Hera's on the ship, and she's in the hologram or whatever Mon Mothma is. So we know they're going to interact that way. So again, it was really cool to see that they were interacting. And it was really curious. Something I did not expect to see, though, was that she referenced the volume, which we've really not talked much about, because with Andor, well, they didn't really use it a whole lot or at all. So,
yeah.
But it was interesting that she actually made the comment to see how they were using the volume compared with how they shot their scenes with Andor. So again, very curious what the volume is going to look like in this show, and see if it has, well, maybe they've reduced some of the shortcomings or some of the learnings from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Maybe we'll repeat some of those. I'm going to call them mistakes, just because it really did feel like such a closed environment. I think it just didn't bring the same scale. Mistake is probably very strong, but hopefully you know what I'm getting to. But it was just interesting to see someone call out the volume. But I like that she talked that it was really cool to work with Mary Elizabeth Winstead. That gives me hopes kind of for what that interaction with Hera looks like, and that it's not just going to be one throwaway scene or something. It might actually have some meat to it.
Yeah, I mean, I fully expect them to kind of be on the trail together. I think we'll see a lot of Sabine and Ahsoka together, of course, but Hera's got to play into that. And once you bring in Hera, now you're bringing in Jason. It begs the question of, okay, so where's Callus? Where's Zeb? You know, who else are they going to bring in from? Because that crew, by the time we get to season 4, the Ghost quote family is massive. There's so many characters, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't know who these characters are. But yeah, the use of the volume is interesting, because this is going to be the first series that we've gotten outside of Andor, which really wasn't using it. This is going to be the first series that we've gotten post-COVID where they didn't feel like they had to use it for safety reasons and because they couldn't go out and do all that stuff. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see just what that balance is and what types of shots and scenes they decided to use the volume versus going out and doing, you know, real world kind of environment sets and that sort of thing, or traditional sets like we've seen with many other shows prior to. So, you know, I don't have a problem with it.
That's a great point. Yeah, I hadn't really considered that too much. Even like Obi-Wan Kenobi was filmed during the core of COVID, right?
Yeah,
so,
and that's what you were saying. Like, I get what you're saying. You're not knocking it. It's just that was what they had, and they did so much of it, and it was
you
kind
do
of
the best you can, right? I mean, I get it. Yeah,
yeah, and we called it out. I mean, there are moments and scenes in there where it feels very exposed. They feel very exposed, and you can see the limitations of the volume. As great as it is, it just probably. I think they had their choice.
You were still physically in a confined space, right? You don't have the expansive depth that you have outdoors or anything like that. So,
on top of that, the technology as well. I want to see how much the tech has advanced since, you know, Kenobi, because it's been a few years now.
Right, and I like the way you put it, though. I want to see what this blend looks like of using the volume, but also can they escape the volume a little bit too, and open themselves back up to on location shooting or more outdoors, or things like that. We see some of that with Mandalorian, but not all of it was actually outdoors. It was still the volume, right? Even though they did a really good job of it. But I would really like to see a blend in order to continue to just immerse you in the story and do that in a very physical way that Andor proved can be so successful when you do it.
Yeah.
All right. I think we should leave it there, my friend.
Yeah, that's good. This is it's been a lot of fun talking about this, and sorry about it was kind of a Debbie Downer there at the very beginning, but it is what it is, and we'll continue to bring updates and news as stuff develops. Hopefully we get out of this quicker, because like I said, I really don't want to sit here and talk every week about it. We'll probably provide at least weekly updates on where things are going, but hopefully this isn't hopefully this is not going to be the main topic of our show every night. So,
well, I tell you what, we will only bring the relevant bits that seem like they're interesting to our loyal listeners here. How about that?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Because it gets repetitive, right? If you just hear the bitching and moaning every time, like we don't want to bring that either. But I think sometimes if there are relevant progress or things like that, we will try to bring them up and make sure you guys are all aware. Any major shifts that are happening, or if it seems like we're working towards resolution. But I think it'll probably be pretty quiet for a while, because it's just going to be all picketing. We're not going to make any movement for a bit. But you know who I would pick it for, Albert? I'd pick it for our amazing live stream listeners. I'm going to read those names out.
I don't have them.
I know. Would you like me to? Oh, yes, I'll do it. I'll answer for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wow, this did
knock
not work
it out of the park there.
All right, we were doing so well. All right, Skywalker's Academy, 80s kid from the 90s, Jonathan, Steph, Sky, Risk, Jorge, Alex, Dante, Rob, Lauren, Riley, Music Train. If I missed anyone, my sincerest apologies, but I certainly appreciate everyone coming out. We both appreciate everyone coming out. Again, cantanticast.com/YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you. Invite you to come out, join the conversation, get some comments out there. We'll throw them up on screen and give you a shout out every episode as well. So thank you all so much for coming out tonight.
And if you are staying with us for the next hour, so coming up in about 8 minutes, we are going to break down our top 3 moments of season 3 of Star Wars Rebels, which, I'll save for the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've already done 2 of these. We did season 1, we did season 2. I think those have been great conversations. It's been a lot of fun to drudge up some old memories, some old funny moments, that sort of thing. But we're going to be joined by Dante, Lauren, Alex, myself, Jonesy, full cast there tonight to talk about it. So please, again, if you're interested in Patreon, you can go to cantinacast.com/Patreon and sign up. I think you can get access by signing up for the $2 tier. Is that right? $5 tier. That's it. I made these things. I don't remember anymore. So
I know. I struggle with it.
That's why Jonesy does it. But that's
well, and you mentioned Lauren, so just a quick plug for Jedi Novel Archive out on the YouTube channel. She just released the High Republic, The Edge of Balance Precedent, which is a manga comic that she reviewed, and she was pleasantly surprised by it. It was something that she had heard about and wanted to come back and do, and she's really thankful she did. So please go support that. And also, she has a great sneak peek of Inquisitor, The Rise of the Red Blade. I've started listening to the audiobook. I'm already kind of enraptured in that and kind of encapturing getting their it's kind of pre-Clone Wars type of beginning to it as well. So really cool seeing the stage. So I'm really excited. She told me I'm going to like it, so I better like it. Again, Delilah is awesome, but she's got a sneak peek for you out there, so you can go out there and get an idea if you're going to like this book. Make sure you get your pre-orders in so you don't miss a beat. And if you're going out to San Diego Comic-Con, do try to get yourself a copy of that special
or get me a copy too.
Edition.
Yeah.
If you'd like to send us something, we'll send you an address.
Yep.
But don't feel obligated.
Okay. Let's leave the show there. Thanks again to everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll see you guys here on the next show. If not, we'll see you back here next week as well.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.